decaying hull of a 30,000-ton Soviet-era vessel. This, Leviathan, is trapped within a dark, flooded subterranean cavern, its steel skin hidden beneath decades of calcified mud, vibrant green moss, and thick, flaky oxidation. The sheer scale of the neglect is the first thing established, as the ship looks more like a natural rock formation than a man-made machine. The restoration action begins with the introduction of industrial-strength high-pressure water blasters. As the technicians direct the focused jets of water against the bow, the screen is filled with a chaotic mist of gray sludge and pulverized rust. The water pressure is so intense that it carves through layers of marine growth that have petrified over decades. You can see the physical transition from a fuzzy, organic green texture back to the cold, pitted surface of industrial steel. This segment focuses heavily on the reveal, stripping away the veil of time to see what remains of the original structure. The sound of the water hitting the metal is deafening, signaling the violent start of the reclamation process. Parallel to the water blasting, workers begin using long-handled scrapers to dislodge larger chunks of debris that the water alone cannot shift. These are massive scabs of rust that fall away in heavy plates, splashing into the murky water below. The goal here is to find the true surface of the ship. By the 2-minute mark, the forward section of the hull has been transformed from a mossy wreck into a raw, wet metal shell, though the pockmarks and deep corrosion craters hint at the massive amount of metalwork that will be required in the stages to follow. The ship begins to look less like a ghost and more like a project. Once the loose debris and organic matter are cleared, the restoration shifts into a more aggressive mechanical phase. The visual focus moves to the use of pneumatic needle scalers and heavy-duty angle grinders equipped with wire brush attachments. This stage is about precision cleaning. While the water pressure removes the soft dirt, these tools are designed to eat into the hard oxidation. The sparks begin to fly in earnest during this segment, illuminating the dark corners of the flooded cave with orange bursts of light. The action here is repetitive but hypnotic. A technician moves the grinder in circular motions, slowly turning a dark, brownish-orange patch of steel into a bright, silver-colored focal point. This is the triage phase, where the team realizes that beneath the surface rust, much of the steel has lost its structural integrity. You can see the tools occasionally punching right through the metal, revealing thin spots where the iron has been eaten from both sides. This creates a sense of urgency and highlights the danger of the vessel potentially collapsing under its own weight if not reinforced soon. In addition to the hull, the team begins to clear the deck of heavy debris. Old cables, rotted wooden crates, and rusted-out railings are cut away and tossed aside to clear a workspace. The camera zooms in on the texture of the metal, showing the pitting, which looks like a moonscape of tiny craters. Every inch must be brought back to white metal, pure, unoxidized steel, before any paint or primer can be applied. This segment ends with the ship looking like a patchwork quilt of shiny silver spots and dark, corroded voids, setting the stage for the heavy fabrication work that is about to begin. The restoration transitions from cleaning to demolition. The most dramatic action in this segment is the use of oxyacetylene cutting torches. The blue-hot flame slices through the thick Soviet steel like a knife through butter. The purpose here is to remove the cancerous sections of the ship, areas where the corrosion is so deep that the metal is no longer capable of holding a weld or supporting weight. The visual storytelling emphasizes the sheer thickness of the Leviathan skin. Molten metal drips like glowing wax into the flooded floor of the cave as huge, rectangular sections of the hull are cut free. There is a powerful moment where a massive plate of rusted steel, weighing hundreds of pounds, is kicked inward or pulled out with chains, crashing down to reveal the dark, hollow ribs of the ship's internal skeleton. This opening up of the vessel allows the viewer to see the internal bracing, which is often in even worse condition than the exterior. The technicians are shown meticulously tracing the lines for the cuts, ensuring they reach back to healthy metal. This part of the video is filled with the high-pitched hiss of the torches and the heavy thuds of falling iron. It is a process of dying to live. The ship must be further dismantled before it can be rebuilt. By the end of this 2-minute window, the Leviathan looks like a skeletal remain, with gaping wounds in its sides that offer a haunting view into the flooded lower compartments. The scale of the work ahead is reinforced as the camera pans back to show multiple sections being removed simultaneously across the length of the 30,000-ton giant. With the corrupted metal removed, the rebirth phase begins. This segment focuses on the arrival and fitting of massive, fresh sheets of industrial-grade steel. These plates are pristine, charcoal gray, and incredibly heavy. The action involves complex rigging, as the new plates are hoisted into the gaps created in the previous stage. This is a game of millimeters. The plates must be perfectly aligned with the original curvature of the 30,000-ton hull to maintain the ship's hydrodynamic shape and structural balance. Once positioned, the welding begins. This is the most visually stunning part of the video, dominated by the brilliant, flickering ultraviolet light of arc welders. The stitch welding technique is shown in close-up, where the technician joins the new steel to the old. The molten pool of metal glows bright white as it fuses the two generations of steel together. You see the transition from the open wound of the cutout hull back to a solid, impenetrable wall of metal. This isn't just cosmetic, it is the restoration of the ship's buoyancy and strength. The camera lingers on the beads of the welds, showing the craftsmanship required to ensure a watertight seal. Each seam is later ground flat to make the transition between the old and new metal invisible. This segment also shows the reinforcement of the internal ribs or bulkheads. New T-beams are welded inside to support the weight of the decks above. The ship is literally being rebuilt from the inside out. By the 8-minute mark, the Leviathan has regained its solid form. The gaping holes are gone, replaced by a patchwork of dark new steel and shiny silver weld lines, signifying that the vessel is once again structurally sound. The focus now moves to the stern of the ship for one of the most iconic parts of the restoration, the propulsion system. The massive propeller, likely made of a bronze alloy, is completely encased in a thick, stony layer of calcium and oxidation. It looks more like a piece of ancient coral than a piece of machinery. The action begins with the mechanical extraction of the propeller from its shaft. This requires massive wrenches and hydraulic pullers to break the seized bond of decades of salt and rust. Once the propeller is free, the cleaning process is shown in high-speed detail. First, the stone layer is chipped away with hammers and chisels. Then, the heavy-duty polishing begins. Using specialized sanding discs with progressively finer grits, the technicians move across the surface of the blades. The visual transformation is incredible. The dull, crusty brown gives way to a dull gold, and eventually to a brilliant, shimmering brass finish. The propeller begins to catch the light of the cave, looking like a piece of jewelry against the backdrop of the dark water. This segment also covers the restoration of the rudder. The rudder is a massive slab of steel that must be able to pivot smoothly. The video shows the removal of the hinge pins, which are often rusted solid. They are heated until they glow cherry red to expand the metal, then driven out with sledgehammers. The hinge points are greased, the metal is polished, and the rudder is reattached. This part of the video emphasizes that the Leviathan isn't just being made to look good, it is being restored to a functional state. The shining propeller stands as a symbol of the ship's potential to move again. Descending into the belly of the beast, the video moves into the engine room, which is a labyrinth of pipes, valves, and massive pistons. The action here is much more technical and greasy. The floor is often flooded with oily water, and every surface is coated in a thick, black sludge that has preserved the metal but made it impossible to operate. The first step shown is a massive chemical degreasing. Workers spray specialized solvents that melt the black goo, which is then washed away to reveal the complex Soviet engineering beneath. The focus shifts to the disassembly of the main engine blocks. Huge cylinder heads are unbolted and lifted away using chain hoists. Inside, you see the massive pistons, which are cleaned of carbon deposits and polished until the metal gleams. This segment is a masterclass in mechanical restoration. It shows the intricate cleaning of fuel injectors, the replacement of rotted rubber gaskets with new ones, and the hand polishing of copper fuel lines. The Leviathan is being given its heart back. One of the most satisfying visual sequences in this part is the cleaning of the brass gauges and control wheels. These steam pump style components are tarnished black. A simple application of polishing paste and a buffing wheel turns them back into bright, readable instruments. You can see the Cyrillic markings on the dials becoming visible once more. This segment reinforces the idea that the ship is a complex machine with thousands of parts, all of which must be attended to. By the end of this 2-minute block, the engine room has gone from a dark, oily tomb to a clean, organized, and brightly lit mechanical workspace. With the metalwork and mechanical cleaning complete, the ship enters the protection phase. This is arguably the most important step for the longevity of the vessel, especially in the damp, corrosive environment of a flooded cave. The action begins with the application of an industrial-grade, zinc-rich anti-corrosive primer. This isn't done with a brush, but with high-volume airless sprayers that provide a thick, even coating. The visual change is dramatic. The ship, which was previously a messy patchwork of shiny silver welds, dark new steel, and brownish-gray old metal, is suddenly transformed into a uniform, matte gray monolith. As the sprayers move along the hull, the Leviathan begins to look like a real naval vessel again. The primer fills in the tiny pits and imperfections, smoothing out the surface of the metal. This segment emphasizes the scale of the surface area. The sprayers have to cover thousands of square feet, including the underside of the hull and the intricate structures of the upper decks. Inside the ship, the same process is occurring. The engine room walls and the internal bulkheads are sprayed with a white or light gray protective coating to brighten the space and prevent future rust. The camera captures the fog of the paint spray and the masked workers moving methodically through the ship. This stage is about sealing the Leviathan against the elements. By the 14-minute mark, the ship is completely gray, looking like a ghost ship that has been frozen in time, perfectly preserved and ready for its final transformation into a functional vessel. Payoff for the entire restoration. The gray primer is now covered with the ship's final colors. In classic Soviet naval tradition, the lower hull, below the waterline, is painted a deep, vibrant, anti-fouling red. This is followed by a crisp black boot top line, and finally, the upper hull is finished in a sleek, dark naval gray or black. The action of the final painting is shown in fast forward, with the colors rapidly climbing the sides of the ship, giving it a sharp, aggressive, and finished look. The detail work is the focus of the last minute. The name of the ship is stenciled onto the bow in bold, white Cyrillic lettering. The restored brass propeller is shown being lowered into the water and bolted back onto the shaft, its golden shine contrasting beautifully with the new red paint of the hull. The deck machinery, the winches, the anchors, and the railings, are all shown in their finished state, painted and lubricated. The lighting in the cave is adjusted to showcase the finished product, with spotlights reflecting off the smooth, painted surfaces. It contrasts the mossy, rusted wreck from the first minute with the gleaming, powerful 30,000-ton Leviathan that now sits in the water. There is a sense of immense satisfaction as the camera does a final slow flyover of the ship. The Leviathan is no longer a victim of the cave, it is a restored monument to industrial engineering. The video ends on a triumphant note, showing the ship ready to be towed out of its flooded tomb and back into the open sea, its restoration finally complete.